Durag Wisdom, folks. Earth date Y2K 17.08.16. And would you believe it? That traitor that we have in occupying us now, who's part of this right-wing fascist coup d'etat of our country right now, would you believe that creep actually told the truth the other day when he said, quote, well, some very, very nice people were at that protest. They went there to protest the, the taking down of the Lee statue. So I did some thinking. Yes, the most frightening thing about what happened in Charlottesville was that some very, very nice people also attended, who were in full control of their minds, who showed up with the support. These people weren't wearing all kinds of armor, helmets. These right-wing turds weren't coming in there with the whole regalia. They're able to have the open carry in Virginia. No, these creeps, they're the ones in the background, the enablers, that quote-unquote as what, the silent majority. So, if it wasn't for all those nice people that showed up there, there wouldn't have been an event. Nice people. So let me give you some suggested movie and reading. In the 1920s, and Rachel Maddow had a thing about the Klan resurgence in the 1920s, they had two of the worst race riots, pogroms, that you could imagine. You had one in, of course, Rosewood in Florida. That was in the 1920s. And there was already a movie directed by John Singleton made about this horrific event. 250 people died or something. The whole town was burnt to the ground, the black community. And then there's a couple of documentaries. I know one is on Amazon. It's about Tulsa, Oklahoma. I remember seeing a documentary called Lynching in Tulsa. And this is about these are documentaries, and I only remember the name of one, that deal with the pogrom against the black community of Greenwood, Oklahoma. Entire community was decimated. 500, 600, 700 men, women, and children were murdered by the deputized KKK mob. So if you get on Amazon, check out this one of the documentaries about this event, about Tulsa. Elie Wiesel wrote a book called The Town Beyond the Wall, and this dealt with the culpability of the people who stood by, the witnesses who did nothing, who didn't stand and do anything for their Jewish neighbors. And The Town Beyond the Wall, this is where Wiesel does a meditation novel on the kind of mentality that would allow people to just stand aside and watch others being taken away for murder. The nice people who show up to these white nationalist events. That's Town Beyond the Wall. We also have a documentary, and I hope I got the title right, called Memorandum. I'm going to try to find it myself. The first time I saw it was courtesy of Professor Farrell Broslowski at LA Valley College in the San Fernando Valley. And Memorandum is a documentary about those folks, the bureaucrats, who went to work 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, whatever it was, keeping track, keeping records of the gold coming out of the teeth, the lampshades made from skin, the hair, the miles and miles of hair, the different categories of people who were experimented on, tortured, how many babies were murdered. Memorandums about people went into work and they kept the paperwork, because as we know, the Nazis were fanatic about paperwork. Nice people that you could be living next door to, who went to work to document, to keep records of, receipts for the torture and murder of millions. We have also the murder of Mary Phagan, a fine TV movie about the lynching of Leo Frank in Atlanta, Georgia, by mobs of quote-unquote, I say quote-unquote, Christians. I love the way people use their religion, to lynch this man they thought murdered a girl named Mary Phagan, and they even thought she drank her blood. And of course, this is related to the Bernard Malamud novel, The Fixer, which is a novelized version of the Mendel Baylis case that took place also in the 1920s. Mary Phagan, I think, was the previous century. I have to look that up. But The Fixer took place in Russia. They took this Jewish man, Mendel Baylis, and they put him in prison, tortured him, because they accusing him of drinking the blood of a Christian child. And of course, Richard Dreyfuss produced an excellent film docudrama about the Alfred Dreyfus trial in Paris, and in France, and this was directed by Ken Russell. So the statement that by this creep in our lives now, that some very nice people were there too, I understand. I'm not surprised by his statement. He's a mean, racist piece of trash. He's not one of the nice people that show up. I mean, look, his papa was arrested at a KKK rally. You get arrested, must be something to that. And these creeps who talk about they want their white culture, what, you mean the culture of beating a kid like Emmett Till, torturing and beating him to death? You mean burning down black communities, denying people of color the right to vote, hate people because of their religious or ethnic origins? White culture. You mean being entitled to come across the country, the ocean, to invade a pristine land, the New World they called it, rape its inhabitants, its men and its women, its boys and its girls, plunder them? You mean that same white culture that brought European diseases over to a land that never saw that? Hundreds and thousands of natives were decimated by a disease they didn't understand. You mean the culture that said, hey, their religion, that's pagan crap, that's heathen, that's dirt worship, let's bring our own religion to it? You mean that white culture? You mean the nice people, the brave, nice people who came across the waters to claim this land for their own? And ironically enough, the people of color on this continent are outnumbering those white folks. Outnumbering them not only here, but all over the world. And I believe that the white folks have to start kneeling down and kissing a little bit of cheek here of the people of color that they've wronged with their so-called European white culture. Evil thrives when good people countenance it. They turn away and they allow it. When they stand idly by the blood of their neighbors, to quote the Bible the people always quote. For once, the birther told the truth. And once again, if you listen carefully, the enemy is all around you, and I don't want to sound like a paranoid schmeck. The nice people who look up to someone like a Hitler, those 35% who are hanging on to Trump no matter what in the polls, 35% of registered voters. He could be smacking them across the heads and even cutting them off, they'd still vote for him. I was never surprised by this birther bastard, this creepleton Trump Putin. I followed his entire persecution of our previous president. The fact that this creep denied that Barack Hussein Obama was a natural born America, just like this creep Trump was. And the only mistake that Barack Hussein Obama made was even showing his birth certificate. As if in doing so, he was kind of showing, well, the federal government doesn't vet any of its presidential candidates. Well, considering what we have in office now, somebody hasn't been vetted. Racism and imperialism are part of the white culture. Manifest destiny, which they pull out of the Bible that they say is a holy book of peace and love, when in the end it helps contribute to the genocide of millions throughout the centuries. And I want you always to remember, not only should you remember that there were some very, very nice people at that racist demonstration who weren't carrying pitchforks and garbage or whatever they were, and noxious liquids. I want you to remember that the Trump war machine is busy at work. While all of this crap is going on, this reality show crap is going on, the Trump agenda is grinding on. His cabinet, made up of all the creeps you could imagine that are trying to undermine our federal government and turn it against us to make us hate it, they're busy at work undermining our environment, our education, our commerce, our money, our health care. Imagine going to a pristine monument and now there's an oil well in there. Imagine no more public schools, all privatized. Imagine some creep from the FCC wants to privatize the entire internet. We are being occupied right now by a force that is trying to totally subsume us into their fascist maw. Don't let them do that, folks. The nice people, some very nice people, some very, very nice people are going to really F up our country if we don't stand up and fight and resist and impeach and indict and imprison the birther, creepleton Trump Putin and his GOP enablers.